Have you ever had that feeling, that sense that something familiar, something maybe you've read or heard countless times, might actually be hiding something? Well, something extraordinary.
Like secrets just waiting beneath the surface.
Exactly. Today, we're kind of diving into that feeling. We're asking if ancient texts, specifically the Bible, could hold hidden messages, things maybe meant for us to find now.
It's an intriguing idea. And our main source material here is primarily a YouTube video called 7 Messages Hidden in the Bible Now Revealed, from a channel named The Power of the Word.
Right, and it lays out seven specific mysteries or hidden insights.
So our mission today isn't about proving or disproving anything definitively. It's more about exploring these claims, understanding what they're based on, and just seeing where the ideas lead. Keeping an open mind,
Absolutely. It's about the possibilities. Okay, let's start with the first one. The mystery of Genesis 5.
Ah, yes, the genealogies.
Right. For a lot of people, reading Genesis 5, that list from Adam down to Noah, it can feel a bit, dry, just names and ages.
A long list. But the claim here is fascinating. It suggests that the meanings of those Hebrew names, if you put them in order, actually spell out a hidden message.
Okay, so walk us through that. We have the names: Adam, Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah. What are the supposed meanings?
Well, according to the source, the sequence of meanings goes something like this. Man appointed mortal doth sorrow.
Okay.
The blessed God will descend, teaching. His death shall bring the despairing comfort.
Wow. Okay, so if you string those together.
You get a sentence. Man will be appointed mortal and will suffer sorrow, but the blessed God will descend teaching, and his death will bring despair, but afterward comfort.
That's quite a narrative. Right there in the list of names.
It really is. And the video argues this isn't some kind of forced interpretation, just a simple translation of what the names meant. They propose it could be a sort of pre-Abrahamic prophecy.
A prophecy of redemption, hinting at the coming of the Son of God, hidden way back in Genesis 5. That's certainly food for thought.
It raises questions about layers of meaning, doesn't it? Like a hidden signature.
It does. Okay, let's move to the second mystery. God's creation, scientific validation, and hidden signatures. This one tries to bridge ancient text and modern science.
Yeah, it starts with Genesis 2, the account of God forming man from the dust of the ground.
And the connection made is?
Well, the first connection is pretty straightforward, actually. Science tells us the main chemical elements in the human body, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and so on, are the same elements abundant in the Earth's crust. Dust to dust, essentially.
Okay. That parallel is often noted, but it goes deeper, right, into DNA.
It does. The source talks about DNA, the molecule of life, with its 4 bases forming sequences, basically our genetic code, and these sequences can be seen numerically.
Right. A, C, G, T, often represented numerically.
Exactly. Now, the claim connects this to Hebrew, where letters also have numerical values, that system called gematria. And the assertion is, if you apply this Hebrew numerical system to patterns within DNA sequences, you supposedly find patterns that reveal the name of God.
That's a pretty big leap, connecting DNA code to Hebrew numerology to find God's name.
It is. It definitely makes you wonder about coincidence versus design. And there's another piece, laminin.
Ah, the protein molecule.
Yes, a vital one. And the source highlights its structure, which visually resembles a cross. They link this shape to Jesus' statement, I am the way and the truth and the life.
It's a powerful visual metaphor, certainly.
So the overall argument bundles these points, the elements, the DNA Hebrew connection, the laminin shape suggesting they might be intentional signs, like God's signature embedded in creation.
Intriguing, if highly interpretive. Okay, mystery number 3 takes us to the hidden code of Isaiah 53.
A very significant chapter in Isaiah, often read as a prophecy of the Messiah's suffering and sacrifice.
Absolutely. But this claim is about a hidden code within the original Hebrew text.
Right. The video describes a specific method, counting letters. Apparently, if you start at a certain point in the Hebrew text of Isaiah 53 and count every 49th letter.
Every 49th? Why 49?
Well, they connect that to the number 7, 49 being 7 times 7, and 7 is often seen as God's number representing completeness or perfection in the Bible.
Okay, so what happens when you count every 49th letter?
The claim is that this reveals the phrase, Yeshua Shmi.
Which means?
Jesus is my name in Hebrew.
Wow. Finding Jesus is my name embedded mathematically within a chapter considered a key messianic prophecy. That's quite a claim.
It really is. It's presented not just as interpretation, but as a discoverable pattern, arguing for, divine authorship and an incredibly intricate design in the text.
Makes you think. Okay, let's shift gears for the fourth mystery, the Curse of Jerusalem. This focuses more on prophecy and historical fulfillment.
Yes, this centers on Jesus' words from the Mount of Olives, predicting the utter destruction of Jerusalem and its magnificent temple.
The prophecy that not one stone will be left here upon another, which must have sounded unbelievable to his disciples at the time, right? Given the temple's grandeur.
Absolutely unthinkable. Yet, history records that in 70 AD, the Roman army, under Titus, did exactly that. They besieged Jerusalem, destroyed it, and burned the temple.
And the part about the stones?
The source mentions historical accounts, like from Tacitus and Josephus, describing how Roman soldiers, searching for gold that had melted and seeped between the stones during the fire, literally dismantled the remaining structure, stone by stone.
Fulfilling the prophecy quite literally.
Exactly. It's presented as a very precise, historically verifiable prediction coming true. A different kind of hidden truth, one revealed by time.
Okay, number 5 is the lost day in the book of Joshua. This one is, well, it's pretty mind-bending.
It definitely is. It refers to that account in Joshua chapter 10, where during a battle, the sun and moon supposedly stood still in the sky to give the Israelites more daylight to win.
Yeah, that one raises some eyebrows, scientifically speaking.
Understandably. The video acknowledges the skepticism, but then it introduces a claim made back in, I think it was 1974, by an astronomer named Harold Hill.
And what did Hill claim?
Apparently, he claimed to have found evidence in astronomical calculations of a missing day, specifically 23 hours and 20 minutes missing from our solar system's historical timeline.
Wait, I'm missing 23 hours and 20 minutes, and they link that to Joshua's long day.
That's the connection they draw. But there's more. They also bring in another biblical event from 2 Kings 20.
What happened there?
That's the story where God makes the shadow on King Hezekiah's sundial move backward 10 degrees as a sign.
Okay. How much time is 10 degrees on a sundial?
The source calculates that as roughly 40 minutes.
I see where this is going. 23 hours and 20 minutes plus 40 minutes.
Equals exactly 24 hours. A full lost day, potentially accounted for by these 2 separate biblical events.
Now, it's important to say Harold Hill's findings aren't widely accepted science, right? There's debate.
Oh, absolutely. The source should acknowledge that this isn't confirmed scientific consensus. It's a specific claim that's been disputed. However, they add another layer.
Which is?
They mention ancient stories from other cultures, Chinese, Egyptian, Aztec, Inca, that seem to describe unusually long days or nights around similar historical periods.
So are those just myths and coincidences, or could they point to something real, something globally experienced, even if we can't explain it?
That's the lingering question they pose. It leaves you wondering.
It does. Okay, number 6. The myth of the number 666. This number has a lot of cultural baggage.
Definitely. Fear, evil, the Antichrist, the mark of the beast.
Yeah.
It's all tied up with 666.
And it all comes from the book of Revelation, chapter 13, right? That's the only place it appears.
That's correct. The passage talks about a mark needed to buy or sell, linked to the beast, and tells the reader, with wisdom, to calculate the number of the beast, stating it's the number of a man, and that number is 666.
But the video introduces a complication here based on archaeology.
Yes, a significant one. It mentions Papyrus 115, which is the oldest known fragment of Revelation we have. And in that manuscript, the number isn't 666.
What is it then?
It's 616.
616. So where did 6666 come from?
Well, the theory discussed is that 666 might be a later alteration by scribes. One prominent idea uses that Hebrew gematria, again assigning numbers to letters.
Okay.
If you take the name and title Nero Caesar and transliterate it into Hebrew letters, the numerical value adds up to 666.
Nero, the Roman emperor who persecuted Christians.
The very one. Infamous for blaming Christians for the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD and subjecting them to horrific tortures as recorded by historians like Tacitus. The idea is maybe early Christians subtly encoded his name as the number of the beast.
So 616 might be original, and 666 a later symbolic reference to Nero. Why does 666 persist then?
The source mentions the influence of later church fathers, like Irenaeus, who argued strongly for 666, perhaps based on the manuscripts available to him. It also touches on symbolism. The number 6 often represents humanity, or imperfection, falling short of God's perfect 7. So 666 could symbolize the height of flawed, godless human power.
So maybe less about a literal future mark and more about allegiance to human systems opposing God, possibly originally pointing to Nero. Interesting twist.
It definitely reframes a very loaded number.
Okay, finally, mystery number 7. Daniel's prophetic clock. This goes back to the Old Testament, to Daniel's visions in Babylon.
Right. Specifically, the prophecy of the 70 weeks determined for Daniel's people in Jerusalem. It's seen as a divine timeline.
And how is this timeline usually interpreted? I know there's this day for a year principle often applied.
Exactly. In this prophetic context, a week is often interpreted as 7 years, making 70 weeks equal to 490 years.
Okay, 490 years. But the video probably focuses on a specific segment of that.
Yes, the more precise part. The prophecy states that from the issuing of the command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the coming of the Anointed One, the ruler, there would be 7 weeks and 62 weeks.
That's 69 weeks total.
Right, which, using the day for a year principle, equals 483 years.
So 483 years from the command to rebuild Jerusalem until the Messiah arrives. When was that command given?
The source typically uses the decree given by King Artaxerxes of Persia, usually dated around 457 BC.
Okay, so if you count 483 years forward from 457 BC, where does that land you? You have to account for the transition from BC to AD.
It brings you to 27 AD, which is significant because that's widely considered the year Jesus began his public ministry, often marked by his baptism.
Wow, that's uncannily precise if those dates and interpretations hold.
It is. And the prophecy continues, saying that after the 62 weeks, within that 69-week period, the Anointed One would be put to death or cut off.
Which aligns with the crucifixion.
Correct. Then there's the discussion about the final 70th week. The Messiah is cut off, apparently, in the middle of the week. If the 69 weeks ended in 27 AD, the middle of the next week would be about 3.5 years later.
Around 30 or 31 AD, lining up with the traditional time frame for the crucifixion.
Precisely. Now, there's debate about that final week. Some believe it was fully completed with Jesus' death and resurrection, ending the old sacrificial system. Others believe that final 7-year period is still future, a time of tribulation before Christ's second coming.
So the clock might still be ticking on that last part.
That's the implication. The argument is, if the first 69 weeks predicted Jesus' arrival so accurately, shouldn't we take the prophecy about the final week seriously too? It leaves you pondering future events.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. 7 different claims of hidden meanings, codes, scientific hints, and prophetic timelines within the Bible. From names in Genesis to numbers in Revelation.
It's quite a range, isn't it? From interpretations of meanings to mathematical patterns and historical fulfillments. It certainly leans into that mysterious tone we talked about at the start.
It definitely sparks curiosity. And like we said, this deep dive was about exploring these ideas presented in the source, not necessarily endorsing them as proven fact.
Exactly. Whether you find these connections compelling, coincidental, or somewhere in between, they offer a different way to look at these ancient writings. They invite you to dig deeper, maybe.
Yeah, we really encourage you, listening, to think about these things. Maybe look into them further yourself. Consider the sources, consider the counter-arguments, and see what resonates.
Because even if they aren't definitive proofs for everyone, they do highlight the enduring power and perhaps the layered complexity of these texts.
It leaves us with a final thought, really. Could it be that the things we think we know best, the stories we've heard forever, could they hold more secrets, more wonder, the closer we're willing to look?
Perhaps the familiar is far more extraordinary than we imagine.